This is 365 2010 Too Much Dave, episode 21. We're at 21, that's a good thing. I did the social media transit implications for learning with George Siemens today. Had another sort of, knock him down, drag him out discussion with George. It's always good. The topic of PLEs came up again, and the idea of personal, and particularly with the word network, personal learning network. And my constant by myself debate about the usage of the word personal. Actually, I saw somebody on Twitter the other day talking about it, about how they too didn't like the term personal. The problem I think I have is that in order to know something, in order to learn something, the idea of personal learning network seems to at some point mean that you interact with your network and then you stop and then you bring it back and then you start to know it by yourself in your own head. I understand people's usage of the term personal in learning network to identify the ways in which they happen to be connected to the network. So if you mean by personal learning network the ways in which I am connected and learn, well, that's one thing, but I think there's another usage there that I'm particularly approaching, and that's that especially when you're trying to get someone else to do it, and you're saying what you need is a personal learning network. You're not actually telling them that they need to build a network, but rather that they need to tie themselves into the existing networks. And in tying themselves in, maybe that's it. Maybe it's the bar that it sets for other people and against other people being able to develop their own. So in order to have a personal learning network, somehow you've got to be a leader, or you've got to be an owner, or you've got to be a creator, rather than really what we're talking about, which is tapping into existing networks and finding ways to interact with them effectively for you. And I guess maybe that's it, because in the personal learning network model, or personal learning environment model even, you end up plucking bits and pieces out of that network, that existence out there, and then clawing it back to yourself, and then finding a place to put it. PLE, there's a sense in which people think of the PLE as the place where I store the things I have learned. So, you would think of Delicious as a PLE in a sense, because it would be the place where all the links that you had learned, when in reality they're just more mnemonics for things that you have sort of started to learn when you started to read them. And maybe that's the issue that I have with it, because and it does set a huge bar, and that's something I hadn't thought of before. But it's also that idea that you're plucking from the network, decontextualizing by putting it in your own personal space. So those are two things that came out of the conversation. Well, one that came out of the conversation with George, and one that came out of a conversation with you. So I'm going to go to bed, because as you can probably tell, I'm sick. This is 365 2010 Too Much Dave, episode 21.